This is not just a story, it's a life, a real one, filled with silence, scars, and strength. Her name is Eleanor Davis, a 75-year-old woman who raised a daughter alone with nothing but her hands, her quilts, and a heart full of love. And yet, when illness came knocking, her own daughter, now a millionaire, threw her out like a broken object in a perfect house. From a humble porch in Kentucky to luxury mansions in Chicago, this is a story woven through generations, stitched with pain, love, and resilience. Settle in, because this journey will stir something deep inside you. It's about losing everything and still choosing to live with dignity. It's about finding light when the world turns cold. And if this moves you like it moved me, subscribe, hit the like button, and please tell us in the comments where you're watching from. Because this isn't just Eleanor's story, it might be your grandmother's, or even yours. We're all ears. This memory is worth sharing.
Honey, it's so good to see you today. Come on over, sit down here with me. Can I pour you a cup of coffee? I'm 75 years old, and I have so many stories bottled up inside. Sometimes I feel like I'm gonna burst if I don't share them with someone. You have no idea what a relief it is to have you here to listen. My life hasn't always been easy, but every wrinkle on my face is a reminder of a fall and a fresh start. Even my own daughter told me I wasn't good for anything. Can you believe it? Kicked me out of her fancy mansion like I was some old dirty rag. But life has a funny way of turning things around, kiddo. Sometimes what feels like a tragedy is just the path to something beautiful. Brace yourself, cause what I'm about to tell you is a story of pain, but also of dignity, about how these calloused hands of mine found worth when everything seemed lost. My name is Betty Sue O'Malley. I was born in a small town in rural Kentucky back in 1950, when America was a different place, more traditional, and even tougher on women without a husband. My dad passed away when I was only 12, leaving my mom, my 3 brothers, and me in a tight spot. My mom took in laundry and I helped out from a young age, my hands red and chapped from the harsh soap we used. I'll never forget my Uncle Earl, my dad's brother, who would show up at our house unannounced, rummaging through the pantry to see what we had, what we bought at the general store, and then complain if he found anything unnecessary. "A woman alone just throws money away," he'd grumble, piling his plate high with our only Sunday chicken. My mom would just lower her head and teach me to do the same. "Family, Betty Sue. You respect your elders," she'd whisper when I wanted to talk back. At 16, I met Jimmy, a fella who sold shoes at the county fair. I got pregnant pretty young, out of wedlock, which back then was a cause for a lot of shame. My whole family turned their backs on me, except for my mom. Even though she was disappointed, she let me stay at home. Jimmy promised to marry me, but disappeared when I told him about the baby. Never saw him again. My daughter, Carol, was born on a rainy night in April. When I held that baby in my arms for the first time, I swore her life would be different from mine. She wouldn't live with her head down or depend on anyone. She would be strong. She would have opportunities, everything I never could. To support my daughter, I started sewing tea towels and pot holders to sell at the fair. My mom had taught me how to quilt, full of colorful flowers and birds flying across the fabric. Later, I opened a craft stall at the town festivals. I worked from sunup to sundown, with Carol sleeping in a cardboard box behind the counter. The neighbors used to tell my daughter, "Your mom didn't have a chance to get an education, but you gotta study to make something of yourself." Hearing that stung like a knife, but deep down, I wanted Carol to have the opportunities life had denied me. My daughter grew up with that bright intelligence that captivated me. While I woke up before dawn to bake pies and prepare things for the fair, she studied by candlelight. "Mom, one day we're gonna have a big house, full of light so we never have to read in the dark," she'd say. I smiled with pride and a certain worry about the hopes she carried. On Sundays, our only day off, I'd brew coffee with a dash of cinnamon and we'd sit on the porch of our little house, where I taught her to embroider little hearts and shared stories and recipes I learned from my mom. Those were magical moments when even in poverty, I felt like we were building something worthwhile. Life never stopped being hard, but it was always dignified. At night, while Carol slept, I sewed the uniforms so she could go to school, looking nice. I saved every dime for school supplies. Many times I went without lunch so she could have a new book or shoes that weren't as worn as mine. I don't regret any of it. But then came adolescence. Carol started to feel ashamed of me, of my lack of education, of the simplicity of our home. When her school friends came to pick her up, she asked me not to come out of the kitchen or talk too much. "It's just that you say some words wrong, Mom," she explained later, her eyes mixed with guilt and shame. Those little wounds added up over the years, but I understood. She just wanted to find her place in a world where appearances matter a lot. Little did I know that all this was just the beginning of a distance that would grow between us, a void that, at some point, seemed impossible to cross. Life took an unexpected turn when Ashley finished high school and landed a job at a high-end rug and artisanal home decor store downtown Chicago. The owner, Mr. Peterson, an elderly gentleman, was impressed with the way she treated customers. My girl had a real knack for sales, for earning people's trust. "Mom, this job is going to change our lives," she said, grinning from ear to ear the day she signed the contract. She hugged me tight. I could feel her heart beating in sync with mine. I cried tears of joy, finally seeing the fruits of so much effort and sacrifice. In the early months, Ashley was still my little girl. She'd come home, we'd share dinner, and she'd tell me about the tourists she met at the store, the expensive pieces she sold, the praise Mr. Peterson showered on her. Our dreams were simple: to get ahead in life, maybe buy a better little house with a small garden out front where I could plant flowers. But everything changed when Mr. Peterson got sick. With no heirs, already weary, and with his health failing, he offered Ashley the chance to become a minority partner in the business. She, only 22 years old, had earned his trust and shown a business owner's vision. But to become a partner, she needed to put up some money. "Mom, I have to come up with the money. I can't miss this chance," she said with a determination I'd never seen before. "It's the opportunity of a lifetime." I sold my only pieces of jewelry, even that silver locket that had belonged to my grandmother. I borrowed from everyone I knew. I was scared, but I trusted my daughter. In the end, we managed to scrape together enough for her to become a partner in the store, which at the time was called Genuine Crafts. As the months passed, Ashley began to change, not just the way she dressed, but also the way she spoke, the way she carried herself. She started hanging out with a crowd of friends where I simply didn't fit in. Our dinners together, which had once been sacred, dwindled until they almost disappeared. When Mr. Peterson passed away the following year, she became the sole owner of the store and transformed the small business into a chain of luxury home decor boutiques. "Don't worry about a thing, Mom," she'd say, handing me money every month. "Now it's your turn to relax. You've worked too hard already." But I didn't want to relax. I wanted to be part of her life, her choices, her happiness. But Ashley didn't ask for my opinion on anything anymore. The complete break happened when Ashley married Michael, an architect from New York City from a traditional and wealthy family. The wedding was a spectacular affair, one of those with politicians, CEOs, people I only saw on television. She insisted on buying me an expensive dress and took me to the fanciest salon in Chicago. But at the ceremony, I sat alone in the first row, feeling completely out of place. "I'll introduce you as my mom, but please, try not to tell those stories about our flea market days," she asked before the reception. "Michael already knows our past, but his parents are quite conservative." I just nodded, feeling something shatter. Inside me, it wasn't shame about myself, it was worse. It was as if she wanted to erase our past, wipe it clean from the perfect life she now claimed to have. I decided to swallow the pain and let Ashley do things the way she thought was right. Deep down, wasn't that what I had always dreamed of for her? Over time, she and Michael built one of those imposing mansions in a fancy neighborhood in the North Shore. It was a house of stone and glass, with a garden like the castles in glossy magazines, furniture imported from places whose names I couldn't even pronounce. Sometimes, she invited me to visit, but always giving me advance notice so that I could dress up properly, as she put it. During those visits, I sat stiffly on the overly white sofa, afraid of staining or breaking something. The staff looked at me curiously, probably wondering how a woman like me could be the owner's mother. Ashley had two beautiful children, Jake and Emily, whom I absolutely adored. In the early years, she let me take care of them from time to time, tell them stories and teach them old songs that my mother had taught me. But as they grew older, the visits became less frequent. "Now we're following a European educational method," she explained one day. "Children need routine." I understood the subtext. My stories, ways, and songs no longer fit into their world. Family gatherings became painful. I leaned against a corner of the ballroom, watching Ashley mingle with politicians and business people talking about contemporary art and international travel. Sometimes our eyes met in the middle of the noise. For a moment, I saw a glimpse of who she once was, but she soon returned to the role of perfect hostess. At 70 years old, my health started to fail. First, it was a nagging cough, which the doctor blamed blamed on years of exposure to smoke and pollution on the streets. Then came the arthritis, twisting these fingers of mine that had created so much beauty. I started living alone in the little house that Jennifer bought for me, with a woman who came 3 times a week to clean and cook. One day, after a bad bout of shortness of breath, I woke up in the hospital, and Jennifer appeared with an unexpected proposal. "Mom, I think it's best if you come live with us. You can't stay alone anymore." I said yes with tears in my eyes, thinking it was finally the return of the daughterly love I had missed so much. I even thought, deluded, that we could recover some of what we had left in the past. The reality, however, was different. My room in the mansion was beautiful, but it was the farthest from the rest of the house. Jennifer hired a nurse who was always on my heels, always reporting everything, as if I were an inmate. I was forbidden from going into certain rooms, especially when there were important visitors. "It's for your own good, Mom," she said. "You need to rest. Trapped in this gilded cage, my days were divided between medications, exams, and a loneliness that seemed endless. The mansion that was supposed to be a haven became a prison, and the daughter I loved so much became my jailer. I didn't accept this imposed routine easily. When Jennifer and Mark were out, I would sneak into the kitchen and bake goodies and make comfort food that the kids loved: apple pie, chocolate chip cookies, and brownies. The household staff, who treated me with a respect that my own daughter seemed to have forgotten, turned a blind eye to my little rebellions. "Grandma, show me again how to do that pretty stitch on the quilt," asked Lily, about 11 years old, sitting next to me while I showed her the basics on a piece of fabric. Michael, 2 years older, pretended not to care, but he was always the last to leave the room, just listening to the stories of the old days. One day, the cook, Mrs. Rodriguez, came into my room holding a yellow envelope. "Mrs. Eleanor, this arrived for you a few days ago, but Mrs. Jennifer kept it in her drawer. I found it by chance, cleaning the office. Inside the envelope, I found an invitation from the Smithsonian to participate in an exhibition about traditional American crafts. Someone had recommended me as one of the last quilters who still knew old techniques." My heart beat faster. Someone remembered my work, valued my story. I kept the letter under my pillow, dreaming of the chance to feel useful again. The next day, when Jennifer came to pay me her formal visit every morning, I took a deep breath and showed her the invitation. "Where did you get this?" she asked, frowning. "That doesn't matter, honey. Isn't it wonderful? I could show my quilts. Pass on what I know before this tradition disappears." Jennifer crumpled the invitation in her hand and threw it in the trash. "Mom, you're not healthy enough to be out there. And what will my friends think if they see you teaching, looking like we need the money? I have a reputation to uphold." That night, I cried in silence until sleep overcame exhaustion. The next day, with a strength I didn't think I had anymore, I decided to prepare a special breakfast for my daughter. Coffee with cinnamon, just like I used to make when she was a little girl, and we went out together to sell our crafts at the farmer's market. I wanted to see if it awakened some good memory in her, reconnected her with the child she once was. I went down to the kitchen early, and Mrs. Rodriguez helped me set everything up. With trembling hands and short breath, I arranged the tray with hot coffee, fresh bagels and lox, and sliced fruit in the shape of a flower, the way Jennifer always liked it as a child. I slowly climbed the stairs, careful with each step not to spill anything. When I entered her room, Jennifer was finishing her makeup in front of the mirror. She looked at me in the reflection, first surprised, then annoyed. "What are you doing here so early?" "I brought your coffee, honey. Coffee with cinnamon, just like you liked it." I took a step, but my legs couldn't handle it anymore. The tray tipped over. The hot coffee spilled on those imported snow-white rugs. The bagels went rolling, and the fruit plate shattered on the floor. Jennifer's face twisted with pure hatred. I had never seen that coming from her. "Get out of here! You're good for nothing! You just get in the way!" she screamed, getting up in a rush. "Always the same thing. Can't do anything right." Each word was a stab. I stood there looking at the woman I carried in my womb, looking at me as if I were pure contempt. Jennifer continued to yell while I, with my head down, tried to pick up the porcelain shards with my trembling hands. Each sentence only deepened the wound in my chest. "I'm so done with this. All you do is cause headaches. Do you even know how much this rug cost? More than you've made in your whole life with your pathetic needlepoint." Mike rushed in, alarmed by the shouting. He tried to calm Sarah down, but she was completely out of control. "Don't defend her. Ever since she moved in, everything's gone downhill. My kids are starting to sound like Hicks. The staff respects her more than me, and now she's ruining my things." With difficulty, I stood up, leaning against the doorframe. Silence fell when I looked directly into her eyes. "Maybe you're right, Sarah. Maybe I'm not good for anything anymore." I left the room slowly, slowly, shuffling to my own space, and with a dignity I thought I'd lost, I began packing my few belongings into the same old suitcase I'd arrived with. The nurse peeked from the doorway, lost, not daring to stop me. "Mrs. Davis, you shouldn't get so worked up. Your blood pressure..." "My blood pressure is fine, Emily. What isn't fine is my dignity if I stay another minute where I'm not wanted." I went downstairs with my light suitcase, but my heart felt heavier than ever. In the hall, Sarah was waiting, arms crossed and that hard look mixed with a hint of surprise. "Where do you think you're going? You're sick. You need care." "I'm going where I can breathe without feeling like I'm bothering someone, honey. I'm going where I can remember who I was before I became your embarrassment." "Oh, please, the drama. You won't last a week out there. I survived 40 years before you had this whole life, and by supporting you." When she realized she couldn't make me change my mind, she changed her tone. She became cold and calculating. "Mom, if you walk out that door, you're not coming back. You won't see the kids." The final threat. I felt a pang in my chest. It wasn't illness. It was just another piece of my love for her breaking apart. "God bless you, Sarah, and I hope your kids never do to you what you're doing to me." I went out onto the street under the bright sun of Westchester, not knowing where to go. I walked aimlessly, hearing in the distance the lively sounds of a party at a bar. How ironic to hear happy music while my world was collapsing, and all I wanted to do was cry. I came to a small park and sat on a bench under the trees, exhausted in body and soul. I closed my eyes, feeling the warmth of the sun on my face. How many times had I faced hardship in this life? How many times had I gotten up after falling? Even so, this time seemed to be the hardest blow of all. A familiar voice pulled me from my thoughts. I opened my eyes and saw Barbara Johnson, my friend from back in the day, looking at me in surprise. "Eleanor? Eleanor Davis? My God, what are you doing here alone? And with that suitcase?" I looked at her, unable to hold back the tears, all finally coming to the surface. I didn't need to say anything. Barbara hugged me tightly, like only a true friend knows how to hug, without judgment, just holding the pieces of me that were left. Barbara insisted that I stay at her apartment for a while, simple but cozy, in an old neighborhood of Brooklyn. I accepted without imagining that that borrowed roof would be the first step toward rediscovering my freedom. "Sit down, honey," she said, serving chamomile tea in little ceramic mugs. "This is your home for as long as you need it." Between hot sips of tea and many tears, I told her everything that had happened. Barbara listened without interrupting, just agreeing from time to time. When I finished, she held my hand firmly. "Eleanor, what I'm about to tell you might surprise you. I'm part of a women's craft cooperative, mostly ladies like us. We embroider, knit, and sell our work in a little shop near Prospect Park. Most of us are widows or women who went it alone and found a way to live through tradition." That same afternoon, Barbara took me to visit the Silver Hands Cooperative Workshop. It was an old house restored, full of windows where sunlight streamed in beautifully. Around a large table, 7 women my age were working, talking, and laughing, their agile hands creating beautiful things. Mrs. Thompson, who was over 80 and had bright eyes, looked me up and down. "So you're the famous Eleanor? Barbara always talks about your embroidery. Show us your hands." I showed her, embarrassed, my hands deformed by arthritis. "That's just what we needed," said Mrs. Thompson, smiling. "Tourists love to know about real life, the story behind the craft. They want authenticity." That group welcomed me as if I had always belonged there. They gave me a chair near the window, a place with good light for tired eyes, and fabrics and threads for me to embroider at my own pace. At first, my fingers were still very stiff, but soon they remembered the old stitches that I thought I had forgotten. A week later, I sold my first embroidered tea towel. It was a simple design, dogwood blossoms framing a hummingbird, but the Canadian tourist who bought it was even more charmed to hear the story behind it. How, according to our beliefs, the hummingbird carries wishes and hopes up to heaven. "Mom, you can't keep hiding," a firm voice said, one I recognized immediately. Jennifer walked into the studio, looking impeccable and out of place amidst the simplicity. The women stopped their work, watching. I felt a pang of shame, not for myself, but for my daughter, for her superior tone and her disdainful glance at our craft. "I'm not hiding, honey. I'm living. I'm taking you home. I've already hired a live-in nurse. You won't have to do anything anymore." That's exactly the problem, Jennifer. I want to do things. I need to do things. These hands can still do more than just hold pills. Jennifer looked around, clearly uncomfortable with so many witnesses to the conversation. "If you stay here, you're rejecting everything I've built for you, all the comfort I've provided." "No, honey. If I go with you, that's when I'll be rejecting everything I've built for myself, my dignity, Jennifer left the studio without even saying goodbye. With the same arrogance she had arrived with, the women surrounded me in solidarity. In silence, Mrs. Rodriguez handed me an embroidered handkerchief. Dry your tears, Dorothy. We've all been through something similar here. The difference is, now you're not alone anymore. I felt something new spreading inside my chest. It wasn't the old ache of the last few years. It wasn't pain. It was something else. A feeling I hadn't felt in a long time. Freedom. 6 months had passed since that conversation with Jennifer. My hands, even gnarled with arthritis, had invented new ways to embroider. Mrs. Rodriguez taught me to use small wooden frames and adapted techniques so I could work without so much pain. The Silver Threads Cooperative became my chosen family, a place of shared wisdom and healing laughter. Our embroideries became very popular. My designs, which mixed traditional stitches with modern motifs, quickly stood out as customer favorites. One afternoon, a young university professor came straight into the shop looking for me. "Are you Dorothy Johnson? I've heard so much about your work. I'm in charge of the Cultural Heritage Department at the university, and we're documenting artisanal techniques that are in danger of disappearing." That's how my second career began, as a teacher. Twice a week, I gave workshops at the university for young people, excited about the idea of preserving American traditions. I taught more than just technique. I told stories, the meanings behind each design, the connection between embroidery and our cultural identity. My health improved. Dr. Evans, who now treated me at a community clinic, could hardly believe the improvements in my tests and my spirit. "What you had, Dorothy, was a sickness of the soul, not the body," he said, smiling. "The best medicine was rediscovering your purpose." My life found a pleasant rhythm. Mornings at the studio, afternoons teaching or resting, Sundays with Carmela and the other women, each time at a different house or in Central Park, all sharing food, conversation, and hope. With my first earnings, I rented a small sunny apartment near the studio, decorated it with plants and colorful fabrics. Only one emptiness persisted, the absence of my grandchildren. Michael must have been about 14 years old and Ashley 12. I thought of them often, wondering if they had forgotten me, if Jennifer had forbidden anyone from even mentioning my name. On a rainy November afternoon, while I was finishing a special order alone in the studio, the bell rang. I looked up and my heart leapt. Ashley was at the door, soaked from the rain, school backpack on her back. Beside her, Michael looked curious, nervous. "Grandma!" Ashley shouted, running into my arms. I hugged them both tightly, almost in disbelief. How did you find me?" "Everyone knows this place," Michael replied, half smiling. "At school, they talked about the cooperative as an example of cultural preservation. When they said your name, we knew we had to come." "Does your mother know you're here?" I asked, worried. They both shook their heads, denying it. "Mom's in New York City, at a trade show," Ashley explained. "The babysitter thinks we went to a friend's house." The secret visit was brief, but it changed my life. I showed them my embroideries, taught them basic stitches, told them family stories they had never heard. Before they left, Ashley gave me a small notebook. "It's my diary, Grandma. Here's my number and my email, and Michael's too. Promise you'll talk to us." Rebuilding my life wasn't just a personal matter anymore. It was about reclaiming what Rebecca had tried to steal from me, my grandkids. With renewed courage, I realized the fight was just beginning, and this time, I wasn't fighting from a place of weakness, but strength. For 3 years, we maintained a secret network. Texts on the old flip phone. Carol taught me how to use. Clandestine visits whenever they could manage it. Small gifts exchanged. I knitted them special things, and they brought me drawings, photos, mementos of a life I'd lost but could now observe. Michael revealed his passion for documentary photography, showing me photos he took of vendors and artisans downtown. Lisa, meanwhile, became fascinated with textile design, maybe because of our talks about Appalachian traditions and quilting. Everything changed one Sunday in the spring, when the local arts council organized a special exhibition at the county museum. My works were prominently displayed, a series of contemporary quilts that combined traditional techniques with original designs. The local news covered it all, doing interviews where I talked about my journey as an artisan and my new path as an instructor. On the afternoon of the opening, as I was explaining the meaning of a particular stitch to a group of visitors, I sensed a familiar presence. Turning, I saw Rebecca watching me from afar. Elegant as always, but with a different look on her face. Surprise and something else I couldn't quite place. We met face to face in front of a ceremonial quilt I had created, inspired by my grandmother. "I didn't know you were still quilting," Rebecca said, keeping her voice steady. "I thought your hands. I found ways to adapt it, I responded simply. True craftsmanship always finds a way. My kids have been seeing you behind my back, she stated, not as a question, but as a certainty. They're wonderful children, intelligent and full of compassion. A heavy silence fell between us. Finally, Rebecca pointed to the quilt. It reminds me of one you used to wear when I was a little girl, around the holidays in the holler. You have a good memory. It belonged to your grandmother, Grandma Bess. Mom, she started but stopped, visibly struggling to find the words. Charles appeared at her side, greeting me with a discreet nod. After a few pleasantries were exchanged, they headed off together to see the rest of the exhibition. I figured that would be the end of our brief encounter. 3 days later, Rebecca showed up at the co-op during my shift. She came alone, dressed with an uncommon simplicity for her. We need to talk, she said directly, without beating around the bush. In private, we walked to a nearby park and sat on the same bench where, years ago, Carol had found me lost. The doctors found something, Rebecca began, looking straight ahead. A tumor. There's treatment, but it's made me think about everything. My heart clenched with worry, erasing all past resentment in that instant. Life's so fragile, Mom. I've spent years building this perfect world, this image. But what for? Michael told me something that really shook me, that he'd rather have a present mother than all the expensive gifts we give. I took her hands in mine, those hands that were once the source of so much shame for her. We're alive, honey. While there's life, there's hope. I don't know if I can change. I don't know if I can be different, she confessed in a vulnerable tone I didn't recognize. You don't need to be someone else. You just need to remember who you are, for real, behind all this. Then we looked at each other in a way we hadn't in decades, not as the successful daughter and the humiliated mother, not as the oppressor and the victim, but as two women marked by their choices, bound by blood and their history. The kids want you to have dinner with us on Sunday, she said finally. This time, no secrets. I nodded without promising what I couldn't guarantee, a chance. True reconciliation would take time, like one of the most intricate quilts, full of patience and detail, stitch by stitch. But the first stitch had been made, and with it was reborn the chance for us to weave a different story together. As Rebecca walked away, I looked at my hands, these hands that had worked so hard, suffered, created, and now, who knows, might also heal the deepest wounds between us.